So with the single leg kettlebell Romanian deadlift, one of the things you want to impress on your members is you want it to be slow and smooth on the way down and slow and smooth on the way up. I'm going to just go ahead and use this dowel so I can talk about things without flopping all over the place, and I can hold positions a little bit better. So when I say slow and smooth, when you come down, you want it to be a slow, smooth movement on the way down, and you want it to be slow and smooth on the way up. What you want to avoid is you want to avoid people just falling into it and collapsing, and then from here you just don't want them to stand up like that. So it's smooth on the way down, smooth on the way up, and be really mindful of people getting into this position and then just standing out of it, because you're going to get as much, if not more, benefit on coming out of the movement as you do going in. So it's both sides. Don't just think about hitting that position and then losing position. You want to hit that position going into it and coming out of it. We need to talk about this idea of open and closed hips. So there's a lot that can happen when you're doing your single leg Romanian deadlifts, when you have your feet planted like this, and you can go into external rotation. You can go into internal rotation. I'm talking about the hips now, okay? And then you can also fall into abduction when your hips open. So it's happening, and there's lots of things we can focus on, but we want people to develop the control to keep their hips more or less neutral, so everything's pointing forward, but then also to make sure that we keep our hips closed so we don't fall into abduction. So we want to have active adduction down here, and there's lots of ways we can do it. I already talked about the reach through cue, and then I'll talk a little bit more in depth about the cross body deadlift. But one of the other things that we can do is we can just try some verbal cues on this. So one of the things I'll tell people is I want you to imagine you have a wine glass on your back. This is a very common one. If you open up like this, the wine glass is going to fall off. So you can just get people to think about this wine glass cue to keep their hips nice and even. Sometimes what you can do is you can get people to think about the opposite. You know, whenever you're trying to correct things, you can always have people try to exaggerate the movement and then control the exaggeration. So when I'm doing hip airplanes, one of the things I want people to do is open up their hips like this. So I'll give them the opposite cue. I'll say, imagine there's a mouse on your back and you want to slide off. You slid the mouse off your back. Okay, congratulations. Now someone gives you a glass of wine and you want to keep the wine stable. So this is really just going in and out of a hip airplane variation where we're opening and closing our hips, but showing people they have control there is nice. And just doing some high rep hip airplanes is really nice because you will feel it in all the muscles around your hips. So make sure people understand the open and closed hips, so when they're doing the peer coaching, they can be coached and coach each other. Then other things to think about with this movement, we want the body to be long and taut. So sometimes I'll talk about, imagine you have a piece of string and you're holding it loose and it has this big sort of bend in it, and then somebody pulls on it on either end and it's taut, and now you can twang it like a guitar string. That's sort of what we want your body to be like, and that we don't want everything to be floppy. You want to be nice and tight. You want to have that tensegrity going on. So when we do it, sometimes I'll have people put their hand forward and I'll say, imagine you're looking into a mirror and I want you to try to reach, and I want you to touch that mirror as much as you can. You want people to think about being horizontal and being long. I'll do a similar cue where I'll say, okay, when you're doing this, I want you to reach forward and have your other leg go back, but I want you to imagine somebody's pulling on your wrist and someone is pulling on your ankle to make you nice and long like this. We really want to focus on people getting horizontal and long and not having people focus on getting low. And I've talked about it a little bit, but I'll talk about it again. The number one thing we want to avoid is we don't want people to think that this is the goal of the single leg Romanian deadlift, is to get the kettlebell to touch the ground. It's not. I much prefer that people take a second, they get their hips in alignment, they retract their shoulder blades, and the kettlebell's never quite touching the ground, and they come in and out of it smoothly like this. This is a much more beneficial movement than having some people come down here, collapse into it, and then pick it back up again. Though there probably are times when it's beneficial to have the kettlebell touch the ground and pick it up. If you wanted someone to train in like the golfer's lift or something like that, I could see benefit to that. But the way that we coach it, we generally do not want the kettlebell touch the ground. We want it to be nice and controlled and smooth. As I mentioned, you can do it ipsilaterally or contralaterally, and if you don't have a why, if you don't have a specific reason for why you're teaching one or the other, I find that you can just save time by letting people do what's most natural for them. So that would be whether or not they want to have the weight in the same leg, the supporting leg, or if they want to do it contralaterally like this.